Greetings. This is Paul the Poke from paulthepoke.com. Today's topic, we're going to take a look at Gog of Magog, two separate places in the Bible where this is noted, Ezekiel 38:39 and Revelation 20. We're going to compare the two, have a brief discussion about it. First, we're going to start out with Ezekiel 38, verse 2. Son of man, set your face toward Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Verses Revelation 20, verses 7 and 8, and when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. So, lots of discussion about these two sets of Bible verses. Some would say this is the same scenario, and this event will take place after Jesus's Millennial Kingdom, so after 1,000 years of his rule, be the final conflict to put an end to all rebellion. Others would say these are two different events in history. The Ezekiel scenario takes place before the Millennial Kingdom, and the Revelation scenario takes place after the Millennial Kingdom. So they kind of bookend the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And just so everybody's clear, full disclosure, website's position, these are two different events in history. And so I'm going to break down some of the differences that occur when you compare the two sets of texts. And the first difference is the calling of Gog and Magog. So who calls Gog? In Ezekiel, it's God himself who calls Gog, and the good Lord is going fishing. Ezekiel 38, verse 4, and I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out and all your army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed in full armor, a great host, all of them with buckler and shield wielding swords. So God is the one who's doing the calling in the Ezekiel passage. In Revelation, Gog and Magog are manipulated and tricked by Satan. So Ezekiel, God; Revelation, Satan, manipulation. Revelation 20, verse 8, and will come out, and that's Satan, to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. Second observation is the audience. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, it's stated multiple times, Gog and Magog will come from the north. All things are relative to the center of the earth, and that's stated in Ezekiel 38:12, and that's Israel, as God sees it. So what are the uttermost parts of the north relative to the center of the earth? Well, that has to be Russia. You go straight north of Israel, Russia, uttermost parts of the north. You will come from your place out of the uttermost parts of the north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great host, a mighty army. And there are other references to this army coming out of the north. You see that in Ezekiel 38, verse 6, and then also in Ezekiel 39, verse 2. In Revelation, Satan deceives the nations. That's ethnos. It's the same words used in the New Testament for nations, peoples, in the Greek, and they come from the entirety of the earth, the four corners of the earth. So from all over, when this invasion takes place in Revelation. Third consideration is the time point. Revelation reference is very straightforward. It's post-millennial kingdom, 1,000 years after Jesus has returned to earth to establish the kingdom. Revelation 20, verse 7, and when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison. In Ezekiel 38:39, there are a couple of references to the, quote, latter years, and that's the Hebrew word akarith. It could also be translated end. And this is often a time referred to as prior to the coming of the Messiah and the establishment of the kingdom. So the end times, the latter years, the end years. Ezekiel 38, verse 8, after many days you will be mustered in the latter years. You will go against the land that is restored from war, the land whose people were gathered from many peoples upon the mountains of Israel, which had been a continual waste. Its people were brought out from the peoples and now dwell securely, all of them. That's a little bit describing Israel today. They've had wars. They were created, born in war, effectively since their beginning in 48. As they became a nation again, they've had 67, 73. They've had multiple conflicts, and now currently they're dwelling in relative security. And people continue to migrate back to Israel. Jews continue to migrate back to Israel from all over the world. You can also see Ezekiel 38 verse 16 for latter or end years reference as well. Now, to me, the most compelling evidence lies in the geographical differences. The Revelation reference refers to the broad plain of the earth. Revelation 20, verse 9, and they marched up over the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. I'm going to take a look at that phrase, the broad plain of the earth. And it's a singular term. One landmass is the implication. Mountains and islands are not mentioned, and that's because they've been removed, and we'll get to that in a second. The Greek word for broad plain is platos, and the term suggests a great extent. It's a massive plain is the idea, and if you look at the Middle East today, that's not the case. The Greek word for earth is gay, and the term is it's an arable land, the ground, the earth is a standing place. So it's a broad mass of earth. It's a plain. And as of today, in the 21st century, the beloved city, that's Jerusalem, it sits on a mountaintop. And that whole region has mountains running through it. The mountains in the north of Israel, Mount Hermon. That's not what it's going to be. That's not what's being suggested in Revelation 20, verse 9. And you're like, well, how does that happen? So prior to the physical return of Jesus to the earth in at least another 1,000 years, before the event described in Revelation 20 with Gog and Magog, and that's where we're looking at Gog and Magog in Revelation 20. Well, back in Revelation 16, there's a statement. And so that statement in Revelation 16, the gap in time from Revelation 16 to Revelation 20 is at least 1,000 years. Revelation 16, verse 20, and every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. And the idea of no more mountains and changed geography is noted in multiple places. So Revelation, this is not the only place you're going to see this. And this speaks to the geographical upheaval that will take place during the 7-year tribulation. And here are what we got, I think 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, different verses. Psalm 97, verse 5, the mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. Psalm 46, verse 6, the nations rage, the kingdoms totter, he utters his voice, the earth melts. Again, it's the totality of the earth. Isaiah 24, verse 1, behold, the Lord lays the earth waste, devastates it, distorts its surface, and scatters its inhabitants. Isaiah 24, verse 19, the earth is utterly broken. The earth is split apart. The earth is violently shaken. You may want to read, just take the time to read Isaiah 24. Some people call that Isaiah's mini apocalypse. It's more than many. It's a big time geological event with earthquakes, volcanic activity. and it's global. It's a global event, is the context of Isaiah 24. Micah 1, verse 4, and the mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will split open like wax before the fire, like waters poured down a steep place. So it's unimaginable destruction. I don't know that we can comprehend that. If you see some of the things that have happened, I don't know, recently with some of the volcanic activity, and specifically, the one that's most memorable to me was watching the events off the coast of Africa at La Palma, and that lasted for months. And when you see that specific island, what was happening there, that's what it looked like. I mean, it looked like it was melting, and it just poured down to the ocean. So now we'll jump to Ezekiel 38 and 39, and there are multiple references to the mountains of Israel. And the context of the verse below is a great earthquake, and so the results again speak for itself. And this happens during the Ezekiel event. Ezekiel 38, verse 20, part B, and the mountains shall be thrown down, and the cliffs shall fall, and every wall shall tumble to the ground. So there are many references in Ezekiel 38 and 39 that point to mountains. So Ezekiel 38, verse 8, verse 21, also Ezekiel 39, verse 2, and verse 4. So again, different sets of geography. And my point would be, based on these, you would think it seems reasonable that these are two separate events, which are separated by at least 1,000 years. So, and then for those who are interested, there is a link to the Millennial Kingdom. Did a series on the Millennial Kingdom several years ago. May want to take a sneak peek of what's coming at some point in the future when Christ is in control, running the show. A little bit better than the situation we got going on currently here in 2022. But that's what's coming. So I hope you enjoyed that. Take the time to share that with others if you find it beneficial. Also, if you'd like to sign up to the blog, type your email address in here, hit subscribe. And this particular post is listed under Ezekiel 38 and 39, categorized right here, far right column under categories. Ezekiel 38, 39, which has been taking up a lot of global news lately. So appreciate you guys taking the time. Hope you have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.